Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Did you see David Cameron on Sky News tonight? It was one of the series of formal so-called referendum debates, except it wasn't a debate, it was a one-on-one. First half hour with Sky's political editor Faisal Islam, and then with questions from an audience chaired by Kay Burley. Watching it was our political editor Nick Watt.
It was a confident David Cameron who arrived for his first uncontrolled encounter with voters in what has so far been a highly choreographed campaign.
The way to meet that challenge mustn't be to leave the single market, harm our economy, hurt jobs and damage our country.
All the preparations in the world can leave even the most accomplished television performer momentarily fazed when voters decide to vent their anger.
I've seen nothing but scaremongering. I've seen no valid facts at all. I've seen no pros and cons.
I think there is a very positive case.
You said that Sadiq Khan wasn't to be trusted a few weeks ago, and then a couple of weeks later you appear on a platform with him. Isn't that an example of your hypocrisy and scaremongering over the course of this campaign?
Obviously, I don't think so, and I'll try and convince you why it was the right thing to do.
Do you regret the personal damage that your scaremongering campaign has done to your reputation and legacy?
With respect, I just don't agree.
The attacks on the Prime Minister for scaremongering go to the heart of the criticism of the Remain campaign, which is accused of issuing alarmist and exaggerated warnings about the danger of a British exit from the EU.
What comes first, World War III or the global Brexit recession?
Read my speech. The words World War III never
A risk to
uttered by
peace
them.
and stability.
The Prime Minister kept his poise, but Brand Cameron may look a little bruised. Even before the debate, there were questions about whether that brand, which has been his party's strongest asset for more than a decade, is still trusted. A recent poll suggested that the Prime Minister trails Boris Johnson when voters were asked who was more likely to tell the truth about the EU. Just 21% opted for David Cameron, while 45% chose the former London mayor.
There's a difference between trusting telling the truth and credibility or wanting what's best for Britain. When we've looked at who is best for Britain, David Cameron comes out top. But Boris Johnson has led on trusting to tell the truth on the EU, perhaps because people didn't know huge amounts about his view previously. But David Cameron often wins on the credibility front, perhaps more than likability or popularity.
The Remain side have done their own research into Boris. They find he's held in great affection, is seen as funny, and is trusted because voters regard him as authentic. But their research also suggests the former London mayor is something of an entertainer who cannot be taken seriously. Confident that the referendum will not be won on jokes, the Prime Minister shunned gags. But he had to work hard to address allegations of scaremongering and to yank the debate onto his strongest ground, the economy.
To me, this is not about scaring anybody. I am genuinely worried about what would happen if we leave.
The Prime Minister went home with something of a bloody nose, but he will be hoping that he can repeat the success of the Scottish referendum. Voters may be disgruntled, but in the end, they opt for the status quo.
Well, Nick's with me now. Nick, just elaborate on what you took out of that hour-long experience.
Well, that was a pretty uncomfortable encounter for the Prime Minister with voters who were raising concerns, obviously, about this scaremongering and exaggerated claim by the Remain camp. But what's interesting is some of those concerns are actually held within the Remain campaign. There is concern that perhaps the Chancellor has been over-egging the pudding by saying that the average household will be worse off by £4,300 by 2030 if we left the European Union. And it's interesting that the Prime Minister didn't mention that figure. He was asked about it. He didn't repeat it. He talked about that level of figure, didn't actually mention it. And I think there is a feeling in that camp that what they need to do is, yes, warn people that there would be a negative effect on the economy, but voters, I think what they're saying to them is if you make these predictions into the future, voters don't believe them. So sort of simple things down, declutter the debate and be much clearer. And we
Nick.
saw that from the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much.